Welcome everybody to another episode of the Men's Sexual Mastery Podcast. This is your host, Ben Timby, joined by my fellow co-host, Ian Hawks. Welcome, brother.
Hey, Ben. Welcome, everybody.
And today we're excited to drop in around the topic of performance anxiety and performance issues in the bedroom, giving guys a basic toolkit and some concepts that can help them remediate some of those issues. So to begin, I'd love to turn it to you, Hawks, and pose the question, if any brother came to you who is just getting started in this work, who is dealing with performance anxiety or performance issues, whether that's erectile dysfunction or premature ejaculation, some of these other issues, what would you advise him to get started?
Yeah, so I would start by inquiring as to what is the anxiety about. And you mentioned a couple of the most common ones, Ben. Yeah. Erection quality or inconsistency. Am I going to get hard? Am I going to stay hard? And am I going to last long enough? Stamina, premature ejaculation. I'd say these are the top two sort of like roots of performance anxiety, and there are others as well. So another one could be there's anxiety around providing a really fulfilling experience for the partner. So maybe there's just been a lack of orgasms experienced by the female partner, despite the man having an erection and being able to last a period of time. So with all of those, and then I'll add in one more, there can also be another one I hear is performance anxiety around like my partner's not really going to be into it or feels like she's not fully into it. And, or I don't know if I'm going to be able to get her wet enough. And all of these aspects of performance anxiety can be greatly mitigated by one single pathway, which is the most common one I recommend. And that's actually like finding a way to have the performance piece of it not in the equation anymore. So like, what does that mean? How do we get performance out of performance anxiety? There's an amazing tool that we have, the secondary sex organ in the male body, which is the tongue. And so leaning on the sex organ that is actually more reliable to bring a woman to orgasm. There have been studies done that show across the board women more consistently reach an orgasm through cunnilingus or oral sex than actual penetrative sex. So that alone tells us that we have a powerful sex organ that does not depend on engorgement, does not rely on an erection to be, effective. It's just our own ability and skill using our tongue. And that can be developed. And there's tools and practices to develop that. We have a training within our program called Oral Mastery, which dives deep into this topic because it's huge. It's really important. And it's incredibly empowering for a man to know that he can bring his partner to consistent, reliable, expansive, blissful orgasms using just his tongue and his hands. And that's completely separate from his cock. So no matter what is going on, no matter how long you can last with your cock, no matter how hard or soft your cock is, it doesn't matter. You can still bring your partner to blissful states of orgasm using just your tongue and your hands. So I would invite a man who's experiencing performance anxiety to shift the approach from penetrative sex to oral sex. Let oral sex actually be the center point of the intimacy experience with your partner. Learn how to reliably and consistently bring your partner to orgasm using your tongue, and then do that. Like really do that. If you want to be intimate, if you want to engage sex with your partner, first go down on her. First warm her up. Make sure it's an appropriate time. Set the mood. Let her feel really safe and invite her opening slowly and gently. And when she's ready, go down on her and bring her to an orgasm. Stay with her, with your tongue and your hands, as long as it takes for her to reach an incredible orgasm. And then you can come up and then enter her with your cock and just see what shifts. See how much that performance anxiety dissolves when you've actually already accomplished the mission, if that's your intention, to bring your partner to an orgasm. Which, as we go deeper into this work, we can start to shift away from orienting towards the goal aspect of orgasms altogether. However, orgasms are still amazing, and especially for women, incredibly generative typically, and an important aspect of a robust, intimate relationship is being able to experience those ecstatic states of orgasmic bliss. And I know for the women that I've been in relationship, the women that I know and talk to and drop in with, being able to experience an orgasm with their partner is important. And if that's lacking, if that's been lacking for a long time, then it's going to start to erode the relationship. And so, how do we bring that in without actually needing to rely on the performance of our cock or of penetrative sex altogether? And that's just actually totally attainable. There are clear systems and approaches once we understand the female arousal process and orgasmic process. It can be done really reliably and consistently. And then once she's already had an orgasm, you can enter her with your cock and just notice how much of that pressure that you may have put on yourself has been alleviated, and how open and ready she is to receive you, and actually how open her body is can also lead to the ability to last longer. Because if she's tense and actually not ready to receive your penetration, that's going to put a lot more pressure on your cock, and it can be like overstimulating for a man. But when her body's already opened up and really ready to receive you, it can be much easier to enter her without getting overexcited too quickly. And then the other aspect too is when a woman is really turned on, and open and blossomed and wet and juicy, that's like the most attractive thing to a man. In my experience and understanding, like what turns me on more than my partner being totally ready to receive me, like there's nothing. It's just that's going to also allow the male engorgement to happen more easily. So exploring oral sex as a pathway to alleviate that performance pressure that you may put on yourself. Like, I have to do this. I have to bring her to this place using my cock. You can actually just let go of that and start to repattern your confidence in knowing that I can bring her to an orgasm using my tongue. And then when I enter her, that pressure's gone. There's less tension in my body. We can talk about the nervous system response that leads to these performance challenges. But essentially that is alleviated when we've already brought her to an orgasm. And then even if we only last 30 seconds or a minute, she's still already had a phenomenal time, and she'll remember that and you'll remember that, and it starts to repattern those responses. So that's the monologue on first course of action I would recommend to most men experiencing performance anxiety.
Yeah, I appreciated you bringing in this first piece of mastering oral sex with your partner first as a way to provide pleasure while you're figuring your own stuff out. And even after you've figured that stuff out, mastering oral sex is the best way to warm up your partner. And you will, I guarantee you will continue using it even after you've overcome your performance issues. So I love starting at that point, and I think that's really great advice. And now moving into the next layer, I would say, of brothers who are dealing with these issues. I know for me in my past, and for a lot of brothers we serve, the easiest way we could distill what this issue is for most men, it's very much being caught in the head and caught in these loops of thoughts, and that expressing itself into emotions, and then those emotions leading to the nervous system going into a fight or flight sympathetic state, tension in the body, which then informs the feedback loop basically of those thoughts, those emotions, those feelings, that nervous system state. And as guys fall into that state, there can just be this negative feedback loop that clenches and clenches, and their breathing gets more and more shallow. They get more and more in their head and more in their head. And then, as we've spoken about in other podcasts around erection challenges, and how many of these issues are so psychosomatic, but that will end up expressing in restricted blood flow, which will lead to your erections being less and less strong, because the vasculature of your body is literally, your whole body is contracting. So if we go to the source for a lot of men of many of their performance issues, it's simply just not having the tools to get out of their heads, to pattern interrupt these loops, and to get into their bodies. And as we talk about all the time, like it's so awesome that the antidote to this is so simple, and it's just the breath. Slowing down and taking deep breaths in through the nose, deep into the pelvic floor, making sounds on the exhale, especially if you're engaging with your partner, whether that's sounds of pleasure in oral sex or giving to your partner. Women love the vibration of that onto their yoni, making these low growling or, sounds, or whether that's us actually receiving, getting that vagal tone going, as many of you may be familiar with. This is how we pattern interrupt these states of getting stuck in the head. And the more deeply we can bring our breath and our practice of staying in our breath and staying in our bodies and getting out of the head and into the body, the more that's going to allow us to also begin to overcome some of these loops. And one of the best ways I just want to mention for us to do this actually isn't even in the bedroom. It's showing up in a daily routine where you're practicing, deep breathing, you're practicing maybe meditation or breath work. There's a lot of tools out there, and we give lots to guys in our training program, and we have our own protocol, and like some of the most potent tools we recommend. But, just the simplest tools to get started is just, waking up in the morning and doing 10 deep breaths and really allowing yourself to get out of your head and into your body, and not reaching for your phone the second you wake up. These are all tiny, subtle little patterns that program our entire day. And when we're doing that over time, consistently, absorbing lots of media, getting caught into the news, getting caught into porn or thirst traps and these things, and when we're constantly in our heads and not in our bodies, when our breathing is constantly shallow, how can we expect to show up in the bedroom with any other pattern of breath, of consciousness, of awareness? So all of this traces back to our personal routines, our personal practices that, again, show up in the morning, and we practice them throughout our day. And this is why in our training, we have like one-on-one daily accountability with guys every single day. They're doing those reps outside of the bedroom. They're learning to break those loops that show up not just in their relationship, but in business and community and friendships and family out in the world. Because at the end of the day, all of this is connected. Our ability to regulate ourselves and get out of our heads and into our bodies.
Yeah, it's simple, like you said, Ben, and also it's incredibly challenging for a lot of men, especially who have learned to live so much in the head, because the head's really powerful. The mind is an incredible tool, and it's really being encouraged in the structure of our society to utilize the mind over the body. And there's an unlearning and a reprogramming that's really necessary for a lot of people and a lot of men to actually be able to get out of the head and into the body. And sex, physical sex, penetrative sex happens in the body. It doesn't happen in the head. And so being able to have a way, like a practice and a tool that gets us out of our head and into the body when we start to get into those loops is incredibly important. And that's what you're speaking to, Ben, about having a practice, a daily practice, something that we've learned how to use quickly and efficiently. And we've trained ourselves to naturally gravitate to that so that it becomes second nature. And like the breath, like you said, that can be such a simple, quick, potent tool. But also, if we haven't actually really learned how to breathe properly, how to breathe in a way that really brings us into our body, how to bring consciousness and awareness to our breath, so that we notice when it's starting to get shallow and unconscious and quick, and then repattern that. And all of this takes time and it takes consistent practice, but it's very possible. And yeah, that understanding that sex happens in the body, not in the head. And with the caveat of that being that there can be a lot of juicy ways to bring the sexual simmer into, into your day, into your relationship, sending a sexy text to your partner or whispering in her ear something sexy that you're looking forward to doing to her or for her later that day, or letting her know actually like, hey baby, I'm going to devour your pussy tonight. I'm so excited to go down on you and taste your sweet nectar. And that can be really valuable way to like make love with our words, and the mental part that can really turn women on, especially, depending on their erotic blueprint. But when it actually comes time to, doing the deed, it's in our body. It's happening in our body. And if we're in our head, then it's restricting our ability to actually show up in our body. And that's, a big piece that you were speaking to there, Ben, about the nervous system, and how if we're in our head and if we're in these thought patterns and these loops of like fear and anxiety of like, oh, am I going to get hard? Then that's just going to perpetuate and exacerbate the very physical response that is inhibiting our erection or inhibiting our ability to last longer. That closing off and that tension in the body that you're speaking to, that's going to lead to premature ejaculation. It's going to lead to erection challenges. And the remedy for that is the relaxation, coming into the body, slowing the breath, and allowing ourselves to soften and relax. And that's another big piece that you didn't speak to there in terms of daily practices, like learning how to actually fucking relax our body and notice if I'm clenching my butt, or if I'm holding my breath, or if I'm like tightening and clenching in my pelvic floor or my belly or my shoulders or my jaw, and just constantly remembering to soften and relax those, because all of that serves to open our body up. So there's more circulation of energy and blood flow, and all of that is going to enhance our ability to last longer and make love in better, more powerful ways. So that's, that's some important stuff around how to mitigate and manage those performance challenges. And then that, just to bring it back around to oral sex, this can be a embodied practice, meaning like a practice that brings us into our body out of our head, by going down on our partner and realizing like, okay, this is just for her right now. And I'm going to focus fully on what I'm doing and what her response is, and how I can move my tongue and my hands and my body and my breath in ways that are really like attuned to what my partner desires and what her body is opening up and asking for right now. And all of that is going to get us out of our head and into our own body, alleviate that pressure that we're putting on ourselves. And our ability to really be present with our partner and get out of our own head and into our body is also directly related to her ability and the ease at which she'll be able to also get out of her head and into her body. And it's equally important for the woman to be in her body so that she can really open up to that arousal and that sexual experience and the pleasure and physical sensations that are there. And if we're in our head, she's going to feel that too, to some degree. And it's going to bring her out of her body and up into her head. And then we're just, two brains trying to make love physically, and it's not going to work that well.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to quickly name, for guys who are tuning into this, like, there can be a lot of complexity. What we're talking about, like, it may feel frustrating for some guys to be like, just breathe, just relax, just drop being in your head and get into your body. And it can be that simple. But I also just want to name that for a lot of guys, some of these programs that they're operating in, maybe of unworthiness or shame or failure, or rejection, or some of these, physical or emotional traumas they had at a young age. Like, a lot of this stuff can be hijacking his psyche so much that may seem impossible. And to those men, I would say, that's where brotherhood is supportive. That's where, working with someone one-on-one, which is like what we do, is supportive, because sometimes the programs are just running so deep that, like, we actually have to go deep into those beliefs, and deep into the psyche, and release some of those patterns. And the only way that can be done, even in my own personal journey, I'm speaking from here, has been in the presence of others, with the support of others who are skilled in going to those places. So just a quick side note there, that, like, if you're in a really, really deep pattern, and if that resonates, and you may feel that in you listening to this, reach out to Hawks or I. This is what we do. This is what we're here for, is to support every brother working through these challenges so that he can show up as the man he came here to be, the leader, the lover. And so, yeah, that being said, I hope this has been just a really nice little short form, podcast to help give guys just a super basic approach to addressing performance anxiety just out the gate. And again, just to recap, what we're talking about here is these two threads, one of them being mastering oral sex. So you remove that pressure, that performance pressure you may put on yourself, and anything after you've brought your partner to orgasms or multiple orgasms or tons of pleasure that has nothing to do with your cock or anything like that, that's a great foundation to start from, where every experience can be fulfilling regardless of how what your penis state is. And over time, as Hermosi talks about, the best way to build confidence is to build an undeniable stack of proof, of evidence, that is otherwise to maybe a lot of these beliefs you may have. And if you begin doing that over time, you stack that evidence, and your partner starts getting more and more pleasure, and you're getting more pleasure from that. That can be a really powerful pathway to start shifting those belief systems. And the other thread being your personal work of practicing regulating your nervous system, staying in your breath, dropping out of story, and just staying in the body, staying in the present moment. We talk a lot about how this work is merging meditation and sex. And really, that's what's at the core of a lot of this. And that work, shows up on our own mat in our own time. And when we can bring that level of presence and awareness to partnership, when we can catch our own loops, not just in the bedroom, but out in the world as well. And we know how to break out of the loops, get out of our heads, get into our body, and be back in the moment, making love to our partners, or making love to life, you could say. That's another core piece here too. So, yeah, I would love to hand it to you, Hawks. Is there anything else you'd add to that as we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, a couple nuances or just acknowledgments around the simplification that we went into with this. As you mentioned, Ben, another thing that we greatly simplified is just master oral sex. Just bring her to an orgasm using your tongue.
Yeah, and there's like 4 hours of content we have in our oral course. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, like it's not just going to come naturally and be that easy for everyone. So if you're like, that sounds nice, but I've tried, it's not that easy. Just like know that, yeah, that's normal too. And that's why we have sex education, not the stuff that we received in school or through porn, but like the sex education that we actually haven't received, which is what we're providing in Men's Sexual Mastery. And there are other ways to receive that, and I'll share just another accessible resource for you. The book She Comes First by Dr. Ian Kerner is a great one on understanding how to perform cunnilingus and oral sex in a way that's systematic. There's a systematic approach where we're learning like the chords and the scale progression of an instrument. So we understand, the basic workings of what we're doing and how to approach our partner in a way that's going to allow her to build, naturally towards an orgasm. And then, so like there are resources out there, and there are ways to understand this, and it's totally normal if you don't feel equipped to do that right now, because it's a complex system. The female pleasure network is complex, and it's an important thing to study if we really care about showing up to the best of our ability in the bedroom and in sex, whether it's oral sex or penetrative sex. So take some time and learn about the, what it is that you're working on. You wouldn't just dive under the hood of a car, not understanding what's going on under there, and try and fix something or try and, make it run. If it's not running, good luck. It's a complex system. So understand what you're working with. And then the other piece is also acknowledging that there can be blocks in your partner as well. That's why coming into the program and having the support in community and in one-on-one work or in group coaching sessions, and being able to bring your unique experience, because every relationship is a little different, and you might be showing up in ways that seem proper and appropriate, but actually there's a response that your partner's having that's creating a blockage or a barrier. And it's important to approach each situation as the unique experience that it is. And so also getting some support to understand what it is that your partner, what your partner's responses are actually signaling, and then how to approach that in a unique and appropriate way, because we're all operating from our own previous life experiences, and we all have a unique blueprint, and we're operating with different pathways in our brains, in our sexual experience from the past, that's informing how we're showing up now. And just being able to, having support and resources to be able to navigate if you feel like you are really stuck is going to be important. So acknowledging that, and inviting you guys to lean in to oral sex if you're having performance anxiety, and see how that might alleviate some pressure for you, and feeling complete with that.
Yeah, brother. Appreciate those last pieces. And I know there's so much more we could dive into on this topic, but for now, let's put it at a wrap there. Just a big shout out to all you listeners and to the brothers in our training program that make this possible. Thank you guys for allowing this community to continue to grow and spread. If you enjoyed this podcast, we'd really love it if you could leave us a review. And if you have any suggestions or ideas for future topics of what you want us to cover on this podcast, we're open to it. Drop a comment below, or any questions you have, any personal experiences. And if you're interested in joining one of our trainings, check us out. We're at menssexualmastery.com. And sending lots of love y'all's way. See you on the next episode.
Amen. Bye, everyone. See you next time.